Good evening. I thought I would give you an update on my reading experience of Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. When I made my last video, I had read the first part of the novel, so about the first 60 pages, and I was quite impressed with Flaubert's writing style and quite happy with how engaging I found it to be. And I talked a little bit about the literary style of Flaubert and his obscenity trial and so on. Now I am at page 150, so I've read about another 90 pages of it. And I must admit, I'm still very much impressed with this novel and with Flaubert. The subject matter and the narrative as such, describing the actions and what happens, it may not sound very interesting. At least it didn't to me, and this is exactly why I haven't read books like this before. I just didn't think that they would resonate particularly with me. But I find myself just extremely engaged in Madame Bovary, and it really is a masterful character study of both Emma and Charles. And it's also a tour de force of small, subtle narrative techniques that Flaubert just pounds off to great effect. When part one ends, we find out that Emma is pregnant and that she's sort of already quite desperate and slightly depressed. And in an effort to cheer her up or make her more happy, Charles is moving her to another village. And this is where part two starts. And in that village, Emma is pregnant and eventually gives birth. And Charles and Emma sort of start to meet some of the other people living in this village, which is, I guess, bigger than the one they came from, but it's still a rural town. And probably we get a feel that most likely it's not going to be an environment that is any more suited to Emma's fanciful longing than where she were before. Now, in this village, she meets a few characters: the apothecary's apprentice, and a guy named Leon. And Leon is frequently visiting the house of Charles and Emma, staying for dinner, and he strikes up conversation with Emma Bovary, and he falls in love with her. And Emma is also quite infatuated with Leon, but without us really knowing why she is restraining herself, it's not really clear whether it's from morals or if it's from anxiety of being discovered or whatever it is, but she does not show her infatuation with Leon. She does, however, suspect that he is in love with her, and that actually makes her withdraw a bit, and then he starts thinking that she doesn't like him, and eventually Leon has to go off to another village, to Paris to study, and Emma is filled with regret. So it becomes this sort of situation where nothing happened, but she regrets that very much. But shortly thereafter, she meets another person, another man, who is also infatuated with her. And for a very brief, speaking of narrative techniques, for a very brief moment, we just get into the mind of this character. And from that very brief encounter, we understand that he's quite a bit of a womanizer and a bit of a scoundrel. And it's probably not going to be great for Emma to be associated with him. He already has mistresses, and he's sort of, it's not a pure or true love that he has for Emma in the same way that it was with Leon. But Emma is so desperate for anything to sort of transcend her experience of mundane everyday life that she takes a liking to him. And there again, after that brief and sort of examination of his character, so we understand what he's all about, we actually then, quickly moves forward, and we don't actually see how they meet, but then we find them engaged in talk at a country agricultural exhibition in the town, and they, end up being alone somewhere, and he declares his love. It's not really clear what happened. Maybe nothing happens, this is 1857, but in any case, things seem to be taking a step further than what it was before with Leon. So that's the long and short of the narrative development. But what's really great about it still is literary style and the narrative technique. And also there's just a bunch of humor in here. Emma is, still resenting her husband more and more. And there's a quite humorous scene at some point where Charles, who is completely oblivious also to the fact that Emma is in love with Leon and Leon is in love with her, he thinks Leon is a splendid guy. Charles asks Leon if he can help him obtain a, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation, de Guero type, sort of a old pre-photography style camera, I think. Because Charles got it into his head that he would like to give his wife a romantic surprise, a portrait of himself wearing a nice black coat. We're never really sure what became of that, but I'm pretty sure that that's not what Emma wants. It's still not clear whether Flaubert passes judgment. I feel in the second part here, I would tend to be a little bit more critical of Emma than I was in the first part. I still sympathize with her plight, but she does tend to have a naive and quite cynical and negative outlook, and everything about her life seems bleak to her. And it seems clear to the reader that even though she would, find what she's looking for, she probably wouldn't be happy with it for very long, because essentially she doesn't know what she wants. But she is desperate. She completely lacks agency, and it's fundamentally a struggle of Emma to find her own voice, find her own agency, and take control of her own life. And that's almost impossible for her to do in the social circumstances that she is in. So I think that is more or less what I wanted to say about the second part so far here. There's perhaps another thing I forgot towards the end of the pages that I read, around 140 pages in, when Emma is meeting with Leon. We get this very sort of intense, enigmatic scene between them, where they're alone, and we see that things are sort of starting to happen. And then we switch back and forth between what Leon says to Emma and what's going on outside at the country fair. So we get one sentence from a dialogue out there, and then one sentence from Leon, and it goes back and forth. And then just when it seems like they're holding hands and things might get a little bit spicy, we then shift completely focus to what's going on outside. And reading it, we kind of want to get back to see what's going on between Leon and Emma. But after we are done with the dialogue and the ongoings of the agricultural fair, when we finally get back to Leon and Emma again, Leon is walking her home, and that's it. So we sort of left a little bit in suspense of how much spiciness actually happened. But those are some of the narrative things that Flaubert is just really excellent at executing, and which keeps everything just flowing very, very nicely, very precisely and engaging, and just beautiful language. So I'm still very much impressed with this novel, and I'll continue enjoying it. Thank you.